I said at the beginning of the show, and part of the reason I said it is because of our next guest. And stop saying to veterans or active duty, thank you for your service. If you're going to say that, say thank you for your service and what can I do to help? What are your needs? What might you be struggling with? Who do you need somebody to talk to? Be bold enough to go that next step. As I say, go the full mile when you're talking to an active duty or retired military person, male or female. Don't just say thank you for your service. They don't say it because they're too respectful to say stop saying that. But I've talked to folks that are retired, that are veterans, that have said it's a nice statement. However, sometimes it falls kind of short of what's needed. But we are blessed to have one of our Army veterans who is very cogent in his observations and also his concerns and fears. That would be none other than Army veteran who served our country for 20 years before retiring in 2019 with the rank of Sergeant First Class, deployed to Iraq 3 times. I could go on, but I'll let him talk about that. Welcome to the show, Adam Mulvey. Good morning, Adam, and welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on here. I think a lot of what we're going to talk about needs to be said, and I thank you for pushing the content for those that haven't heard it yet.
You got it, man. Well, listen, I will say it. Thank you for your service, but more importantly, we want to have you on the show so that we can try to find out ways to keep you propped up and how we can be of service to you. And so I want that to come out early. Listen, man, I'm going to dive right in the deep end of the pool. You were Representative Brad Schneider's guest at the Trump address last week in D.C., and you were there to observe what went on live, not Memorex. So I'm going to ask you kind of a 2-part question. Tell us a little bit about that, but also, unfortunately, you guys don't know this, but Adam is one of the fired federal worker Army veterans that's concerned about the VA. So, Adam, tell us a little bit about last week, but in a broader sense, talk a little bit about your views and your concerns about the future of the VA.
Well, the adrenaline has worn off from last week. It was an honor to go and meet Representative Schneider. I'm new to Illinois, so I didn't know him before this. But he's been tremendously helpful and graceful, and talked to my family and made sure that I was okay. And just like you said in your introduction, he asked what can he do to help. He didn't worry about platitudes. He wanted to know what action could be taken. So he invited me down to D.C. for the joint session of Congress, and it was a wonderful event. I'm a lifelong studier of history. I was a political science major in college. It was a tremendous historical event to see all of our legislators together in one room, and I really openly went wanting to hear something positive, wanting to have something to take away, some way to see that there was a plan and a guiding hand going forward. And right before we went into the chamber and sat in our seats, I saw that come across the news, the next announcement that the VA was planning to lay off 84,000 more. And to put it in context, the first week, the week of Valentine's Day, when I was laid off, there was about 1,000 laid off from the VA. That had an effect not only on day-to-day care and services, but on the morale of the institution. The following week, before the State of the Union or before the joint session of Congress, 1,400 more were laid off from the VA, and that even had a more devastating effect. So I walked in there knowing that now 84,000 or 83,000, depending on which news source you look at, were also on the chopping block. So I was going in there wanting to hear something positive and wanting to hear something uplifting. I didn't expect to, but I still wanted to. So for those of you that have never been in the House chamber, and I've never been, it's just a wonderful feeling to know the history of the room and to what's taken place there. And the gallery seated above the legislators was where the guests were, and I wasn't sure what to expect. I wasn't sure if you were going to be seated with those of the party from the representatives who invited you, or if you were going to be seated in some other way or manner. Each representative only gets one ticket, but Representative Schneider was able to talk to his peers and get a second ticket so that my wife could also be in the room. She accompanied me, and she wanted to see what was going to take place. As it turned out, my wife was seated in a section that was decidedly to the left. She was seated next to a cancer researcher who had lost their job and several others of like mind. I was mostly seated in those that were cheering and standing for the entire time. So she and I had different perspectives on what we saw. It was interesting to hear the speech and to see how half the room stood up immediately upon anything the president said. And for the long time, I'd been naive or tried to fool myself that most people in the country, I'm sure, are the same way I am, are sure of like minds, definitely support veterans, definitely support the work of the VA. But seeing that half the room, not just the legislators, but half the guests were 100% in alignment with everything that was being said, was a stark reminder that we're not where I thought we were as a country. As you know from seeing the speech, I didn't take away too many things from the speech other than the same tired platitudes that get rehashed, that federal workers don't want to come to work, they're lazy, they're a drain on the economy, they're a drain on the government. The same things that get shared by obviously those who don't know government workers or don't know veterans in their life. And although there's a large percent of veterans in the country, and especially in the Chicago and Illinois area, it's kind of a tight-knit community. Mm-hmm. Those who have served tend to come from families where there's other service. Those who are veterans tend to work at locations or places where they feel a sense of community. So there are many people in this country that don't know veterans in their life and don't know government employees. So unless stories are shared like mine and the many, many, many others that were shared at the State of the Union, people have no reason to deny those rumors they see on mainstream media. So one of the things that I appreciate for Representative Schneider and appreciate from you is that you're sharing stories so people can see a face behind some of these numbers that are going across the chyron on the bottom of the media screen.
You took my breath away, Adam, and your ability to see this from a broad perspective and your wife's perspective. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. You were at the Federal Center there in North Chicago. Am I correct?
Correct. It's the Captain James A. Lovell Federal Healthcare Center. And it's not just a traditional VA. It's the only federal healthcare center in the country. And what that means is it combines active duty. So there's active duty Navy that can get seen there and also work there. It has the recruits from Naval Station Great Lakes. 32,000 recruits come through there every year. It has a VA veteran population, those who have served. And because it's also a TRICARE facility, retirees and their families can get seen there as patients. So I'm a patient there at the VA. My wife and children are patients there through TRICARE. So it's one of the largest, most active VA facilities, and the health care there is tremendous. When you talk to those who have gone to the VA for services, you're only going to hear complaints, and most people have good, valid complaints. But when I went to Lovell and I was looking to become an employee there, it was the first time I had been confronted with compliments and people talking about how much they enjoy it and how much they like the community and the continuing care and the follow through. So, I mean, it's a wonderful place. I wish I could have a bone to pick with them, and I wish I could, be angry at the facility, but I can't. It's a tremendous facility. The staff all the way up to the hospital director have been very supportive of me, and I continue to get my care there. I was there yesterday for an appointment and seeing those that I have been working with. So it's a very good facility, and I'm concerned how it's going to fare in the future. The first few days after I was terminated and I received a late night email on Valentine's Day, I was concerned, what could I do to get my position back? Who did I need to call? What positive action steps did I need to take? Now it's been a few weeks removed. Rationally, I'm probably not going to end up working back there again. Even if they were to undo the terminations through various court cases that are ongoing, I've got to move on. I've had interviews this week. I'm continuing to interview. Before you called me in, I was scrolling through LinkedIn trying to see what other positions are open because I have a wife and 3 young kids to take care of. But I can't not share my story because there are 84,000 more who are going to be on the chopping block. And there's other veterans like myself who are going to either receive good care or not receive good care based on those decisions. So going to D.C. was very cathartic. Mm-hmm. I knew that there were other veterans who had been terminated, but almost every Democratic representative I met while I was there, and I met a good bunch, had a guest with them who was a terminated federal worker. I met an individual who was a part of USAID who was terminated and sent home. After the speech, I sat down with CNN at a roundtable interview with 3 other veterans, 2 of which who were fired from the VA as well. So it's a growing community of those of us through shared suffering. And we've all talked that we probably can't undo what has happened to us, but we can make it better and easier on those who are going to still be working there and still be patients there. So we've got to continue sharing the story in any way we can.
So, Adam, those last couple of sentences, and I knew you were going to say it that way. Those are the sentences, that passion, that service, that give back. That's what gets people like me choked up, because it's just like you were on the battlefield, and that is something happened to you, but you've got folks that are still out there fighting that you want to make sure that they're taken care of and cared for. And that, my man, I have to give you a long-distance big hug and high five, because that is what so many people miss about what's the community of our military, active duty and retired, is that it's a community that still cares for each other. And the work and the service that you brought to the people that needed it is so incredibly important, not just to the folks who have served or serving, but the surrounding communities. What I know from my experience with my own family that have retired in Northern Virginia, that have served in the Marine Corps and in the Navy, is that they're constantly in service, not just of people who are in and active or retired, but the greater community surrounding that. And I think this is where this crazy DOGE and administration executive orders, they're completely without concept of how this is going to destroy economies in the surrounding communities of military installations, military veterans facilities, and the list goes on. And am I crazy in seeing it that way, or have you made an observation that's kind of similar to that?
Well, I see it as two-sided, and I think for the longest time, those in the civil service and those in military community and those in the veteran community have not done a good job of talking about what they do. I for one, I don't like talking about myself. It was more difficult coming on all of these TV interviews and talking to you than a lot of the things I've done in the service. We don't really popularize or share what we're doing. We just kind of want to get the work done. Right. You know, when I was still active duty and my non-military family or non-military friends would ask, you know, why did you re-enlist again? You know, I have two choices. I could tell them the truth, which was, I really like working in this community. These people are working day in and day out to help each other. It's a family. I want to keep doing it. But if I said that, most people wouldn't really understand it. So I, like many others, would go with the easy answer. Money for college, or there's good medical benefits. You say the answer that is just going to end the conversation quickly. The same thing, I think, occurs with a lot of government employees. Well, why are you working there? And rather than say, I enjoy the community and I enjoy the service, and even though I can make much more money on the private sector, I take a little bit of a hit financially because I love what I'm doing. People won't really understand that. They won't understand the self-sacrifice as much, or I didn't think they would. So I would say the same as many other civil service employees and government employees. It's an easy job. It's steady. I'm going to be there for a long time. They'll take care of me. Yeah. So we don't do a good job of explaining our motivations for a host of reasons. I know I didn't. So there was a program the VA started about a year ago, which was called the Tour of Duty program. They wanted to encourage the civil servants that work in the organization that don't have a military background to understand their place in the community, to understand that civil service is as important as uniformed service because you're giving back to the community and the country. It was a pilot program. The VA started teaching it at several locations, including Lovell in North Chicago. And I was asked to be one of the teachers to instruct others on how to teach this class. And so when they sent the first set of slides down there and we were going through it, they flipped to one and it had some pictures of soldiers in Iraq. And unbeknownst to me, there was a picture of a 22-year-old me that had been chosen by someone 1,000 miles away in the slideshow. And it just further hit home that we are a community and that we need to incorporate all portions, civil service, veterans, family members. And so I don't know if that program will continue, if they'll keep teaching it in the VA. I hope they still use my picture and they use it as a talking point for, you know, not doing right by employees. But it's going to hurt the surrounding communities, not just, you know, financially and not just from a technical standpoint, but veterans and civil servants continue to serve in many ways. a large portion of my church are retired veterans who have cheered me on and were glad that I was going to speak truth to power. They're much older than I am, and they said they would be in the streets demonstrating because nothing can be done to them at this point. They're 70s. So what's going to happen? At the school where my wife works, those who are serving our children and our families there see the value and see the importance of it. I don't live in a military community, but I need to share what's going on to try to broaden that understanding. 2001, 9/11 was far removed. Everyone was able to support the military and stand behind. After 20 years of wars in the Middle East, I don't see that much support going on there. So sharing stories like we're doing today is tremendously valuable. I'm glued to the news every day. I'm watching what's going on in the courts. Yesterday, I saw that several GOP legislators are sponsoring a bill to provide oversight on any future terminations at the VA. I don't think that would have happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think that the dozens and dozens of people such as myself, many who are much more eloquent than I am, sharing these stories have put pressure on the other party. And that's what needs to be done. There's court cases. People are standing up against the slashing of jobs and terminations. Now that they see it's having a definite effect on what's going to take place.
Adam, the focus of today's show loosely has been fight back, fight back, fight back. Bring a sledgehammer and be ready to fight. And your point is well taken about the fight and the phone calls and the letters and the emails and the protests are necessary, because at some point, and you know this from being in battle, literally, y'all, in battle, not wannabe, but real battle, not cosplaying, you understand that the more you bring force to an issue, the more you are able to get that issue resolved. And I appreciate you articulating the importance of the voices and the protests. And you are, let me just say this to you, you are a very articulate voice in this space. So don't sell yourself short, brother. Don't do that. I will tell you that as someone that wants to encourage you. I want to ask you one or two last questions as we wrap up. And this is a personal question, but it's one that I'm going to ask you. How is your wife and how your wife, Jessica, and how are your children holding up right now?
My wife is tremendous. She has supported me through years and years of the military. She's doing the same thing now. She's the one who encouraged me to reach out to Representative Schneider. She's the one who encouraged me to do interviews. She wants my story to be shared. She knows I don't often talk about it, and she sees this as a tremendous opportunity for my children to see me standing up for a greater purpose. My daughter was born while I was in Afghanistan. My two younger children have vague memories of me in uniform, but not going away. So they didn't see a lot of the things that my wife saw. Now they're seeing me be able to be part of a community and stand up and raise my voice. So to teach them a life of service and a life of activism is tremendous. I have resources that a lot of these younger government employees or younger veterans don't have. I have a pension from having retired from 20 years of service. I'm also disabled, so I have some resources from that. My wife works. We have some means to weather the storm as I look for my next career. So as a family, we're going to be okay. My children understand. I told them from the beginning what was happening and what it would mean and what little sacrifices we would all have to make. But I'm positive. I'm positive about everything in my life because I know that I have a family to look out for, and I won't quit for any means. So I'm going to be fine. My wife is probably downstairs listening, shaking her head, saying, ask for anyone to hire you. I will get by, but there's a lot of people who will be struggling and will end up in a terrible situation because of being terminated with no notice and no severance and no due process rights. Yeah. So many veterans and so many government employees have been terminated that states are unable to process all of the unemployment paperwork right away. Federal agencies aren't reporting the wage information, so you can't collect unemployment quickly in a lot of areas. So there's a lot of second and third order effects that happen that people haven't been prepared for.
We talked a little bit about that earlier in the show in terms of the unemployment filings. Adam Mulvey, veteran of our U.S. Army, a great father, a great dad, a great American that's fighting and staying in the fight. And I say this to you wholeheartedly, Adam. We got you. if you want to come back and talk more and share stories and things that you were working on or people that you're trying to help, you've got a spot here to be able to do that, because we want to let you know that we support you. We support your wife, Jessica, and so many others who are in the circumstance that you just described. And we want people to be able to, we want you to be able to know that people are here to support you. If there is a way for folks to communicate with you, let them know what that is, if that's something that you choose to want to do.
Well, up until about 2 weeks ago, I was not very active politically and not very involved and out there. But if anyone wants to find me on LinkedIn, I share a lot of my views on there. That's a great way to connect. It's a great way for employers and veterans to connect. My trade is that of emergency management and disaster preparedness. So in those circles, I'm able to share information. So, Adam Paul Mulvey on LinkedIn is the best way to find me. But honestly, what if I could ask for people to do is share the stories that you come across. People in your neighborhood, your community, your church, share their stories, because not everyone's paying attention because they don't have a vested interest. Share them those stories, and maybe they will have a little bit more interest than they did the day before.
Well put, Adam. Thank you for being with us. We will have you back again. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's share those stories. And we appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning. Shout out to you. Shout out to your family. And stay strong, brother. We got you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the service that you're providing.
Oh, we appreciate that, Adam. Be well and stay safe, man. We'll talk soon, okay?
Thank you.